It was late at night when the car finally stopped. Deep in the Congolese wilderness. No cameras, no reporters, no official record. Inside, Patrice Lumumba, the first democratically elected leader of the Congo, exhausted, beaten, dangerously ill. Witnesses would later claim he had been given something to drink, a simple cup, passed quietly, never tested. By sunrise, Lumumba would be dead. The world was told it was chaos, a tragic consequence of instability, political violence in a young nation. But buried documents, missing evidence, and whispered confessions would later suggest something far darker. Because this was not just a killing, it may have been an execution, ordered far beyond Africa. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This story has haunted historians for over 60 years, not because of what we know, but because of what was deliberately hidden. Who wanted Lumumba gone? And why? Was this a local power struggle between rival politicians? Or a Cold War assassination, hidden behind the chaos of independence? And that cup, if Lumumba was poisoned in his final hours, someone had to authorize it. Someone had to plan it. Someone had to watch. The answers won't be clean, but they're there, buried in declassified files, in witness testimonies no one wanted to hear, in the patterns powerful nations leave behind when they decide a leader has become inconvenient. So let's go back to 1960, to a country on the edge of freedom, and to the man who dared to believe independence could be real. Patrice Lumumba was not supposed to be a revolutionary. He was a postal clerk, a beer salesman, a writer of letters and essays that most people never read. But he had something rare. He could speak to people. Not at them, to them. When Belgium announced it would finally grant independence to the Congo in 1960, Lumumba became the voice millions had been waiting for. He spoke of dignity, of self-determination, of a Congo that belonged to Congolese people, not foreign shareholders. And on June 30th, 1960, Independence Day, Lumumba stood before the world. While the Belgian king spoke of partnership and progress, Lumumba told the truth. He spoke of slavery, of forced labor, of children whose hands were cut off for failing to meet rubber quotas. He said what no colonizer wanted to hear: "We are no longer your monkeys." The applause in the stadium was deafening. But in Brussels, in Washington, in boardrooms across Europe, the reaction was different. Lumumba had just made himself dangerous, not because he was violent, but because he refused to be controlled. And that is something powerful people cannot tolerate. Within weeks, the country began to fracture. The mineral-rich Katanga province declared independence, backed by Belgian mining companies, backed by foreign mercenaries. Lumumba asked the West for help. They refused. So he turned to the Soviet Union, and that single decision sealed his fate. Because in 1960, the Cold War was not a metaphor. It was a system. And anyone who threatened that system didn't get a second chance. By September 1960, Lumumba was isolated. His government was fractured. His allies were disappearing. The CIA was watching, and watching closely. Declassified documents would later show that in August of that year, CIA Director Alan Dulles sent a cable to the station chief in the Congo. It was direct. The removal of Lumumba is an urgent and prime objective. Not arrest, not exile, removal. A CIA scientist, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, was sent to the Congo. He carried a kit, biological toxins, designed to cause illness, incapacitation, or death. The plan was simple: poison Lumumba's food, poison his toothpaste, poison anything he might consume. We know this because the poison was real. The scientist admitted it later. The plan was authorized at the highest levels. But here's where the story gets murky. Did they succeed, or did something else happen first? Because in December 1960, Lumumba tried to escape. He fled Leopoldville in the middle of the night, heading towards Stanleyville, where his supporters still held power. He almost made it. But his convoy was stopped, captured by soldiers loyal to Joseph Mobutu, a rising military officer with close ties to the CIA. And this is where witnesses start describing something strange. Lumumba was taken into custody, moved between locations, beaten, humiliated in front of cameras. But several people who saw him in those final days said he looked different, weak, disoriented, not just from trauma. One witness, a soldier who later fled the country, claimed that Lumumba was given a drink, late at night, in a vehicle, passed to him by someone he didn't recognize. He drank it. Hours later, his condition worsened. No autopsy was ever performed. No medical records were kept. But the timeline, the testimonies, the CIA's own poison plan, they all point to the same question. Was the cup the method, or was it just insurance? If this story is making sense so far, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who's really watching till this point. Now, let's talk about what happened next. On January 17th, 1961, Patrice Lumumba was transferred one final time to Katanga Province, the breakaway region controlled by Moise Tshomba, a man who had called Lumumba a communist, a traitor, a threat to stability. Lumumba arrived at night with two close allies, Maurice Mpolo and Joseph Okito. By morning, all three were dead. The official story? They were killed by angry villagers, a spontaneous act of mob justice. But villagers don't execute prisoners in the middle of the night, and they don't have Belgian officers standing nearby. Witnesses later described what really happened. Lumumba and his companions were taken into the bush, lined up, shot by a firing squad. Belgian officers were present. One of them, Gerard Soete, would later admit on camera that he helped dissolve the bodies in acid to ensure no grave could become a shrine, no burial, no remains, no proof, just absence. For years, this is where the story ended. Lumumba was dead, killed in a chaotic civil conflict, a tragedy, but nothing more. But in the 1970s, something changed. The U.S. Senate launched the Church Committee, an investigation into CIA abuses during the Cold War, and buried in thousands of pages of testimony were the poison plots, not just against Lumumba, against Castro, against leaders in Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia. The CIA had built an entire program around destabilization, coups, assassinations, psychological warfare. And the Congo? It was a testing ground. Documents showed that. The CIA provided weapons to Mobutu's forces. They funded anti-Lumumba propaganda. They monitored his movements, and they discussed, in writing, the use of lethal substances. But here's the problem. No document explicitly says, "We poisoned Lumumba." Instead, there are gaps, redacted sections, missing cables. And the poison kit? It was allegedly destroyed, never used, according to official testimony. But if it was never used, why send it? Why authorize it at the highest levels? And why did Lumumba's condition deteriorate so suddenly? After that drink? In 2001, 40 years after Lumumba's death, Belgium launched an official inquiry. They wanted to know, what role did Belgium play? The report confirmed what many had suspected. Belgian officials knew about the execution in advance. Some were present, some participated. But the report also said something else. Belgium bears moral responsibility, but did not order the killing. Moral responsibility, not legal, not criminal, just moral. Translation? We knew. We helped, but we're not officially guilty. And the United States? In 2013, the CIA released more documents, more details about Operation Wizard, the destabilization campaign targeting Lumumba. They confirmed. Dulles authorized removal. Gottlieb delivered poison. The station chief was ordered to act. But the documents still insist the poison was never used. And maybe that's technically true. Maybe the firing squad came first. But here's what we know for certain. The intent was there. The tools were there. The authorization was there. And whether the poison ended up in a cup, or a toothbrush, or a meal, doesn't change what this was. This was not chaos. This was a decision. Made in Washington, supported in Brussels, executed in the Congo. And the message was clear. You can win an election. You can have the support of your people. You can speak truth to power. But if your independence threatens the wrong interests, you will be removed. Lumumba's wife, Pauline, spent years searching for his body. She never found it. His children grew up without a father, without a grave to visit. And the Congo? It fell into decades of dictatorship. Mobutu, the man who helped capture Lumumba, ruled for 32 years. With full Western support, Lumumba became a martyr, a symbol. But symbols don't raise children. They don't rebuild nations. And the people who ordered his death? Most of them lived long, comfortable lives. 61 years after his death, a single tooth, all that remained of Patrice Lumumba, was returned to his family by Belgium. One tooth. That's what was left. Of a man who dreamed of a free Congo. It was given a state funeral. Thousands attended. But the tooth is not justice. It's a reminder. Because here's the thing about Lumumba's story. It didn't end in 1961. It repeated. Allende in Chile, Arbenz in Guatemala, Sankara in Burkina Faso. Leaders who challenged the system, who refused to play the game, who believed sovereignty meant something. And each time, the pattern was the same. Destabilization, isolation, removal. Sometimes it was a coup. Sometimes it was a bullet. Sometimes it was a cup. So was Lumumba poisoned? Maybe. Maybe the poison weakened him before the execution. Maybe it was just the backup plan. But in a way, that's not the point. The point is this. The intent to kill him was real. The infrastructure to do it was real. The authorization from the highest levels was real. Whether the method was poison, bullets, or political sabotage, doesn't change what this was. It was an assassination, disguised as chaos. And the scariest part? It worked. Lumumba is remembered as a martyr. But the systems that killed him, they're still here. Still deciding which leaders are acceptable, which democracies are tolerable, which resources belong to whom. The language has changed. We don't talk about destabilization anymore. We talk about security, stability, strategic interests. But the pattern is the same. Power doesn't fear violence. It fears independence. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Do you believe Lumumba was poisoned? Was this Cold War strategy or murder? What would you have done if you were in his position? Would you have compromised? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have spoken the truth, knowing what it might cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear what you think. And if you think this conspiracy was shocking, wait until you hear what happened when another African leader tried to challenge global power. That story's coming next. If this moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to understand how history really works. Because the only way these stories stay buried is if we stop telling them.